Just give me 1 minute. All right. So good morning, everyone. So basically today we're going to go over real estate taxes and other liens, right? We're going to describe the characteristics of statutory and equitable liens and what that means, what general taxes, special taxes, and so forth, and real property liens, judgments and taxes, and so forth. Some of the key terms: ad valorem taxes, equalization factors, which we talked a little bit about this morning already, but we're going to get deeper into it. Equitable liens, general liens, inheritance taxes, involuntary liens, judgments, mechanics liens, and so forth. So really what we discussed, and we discussed this a little bit at our last class, and just to kind of do a quick little recap for this first beginning part, is we want to know, what is a lien? So first off, who knows what is a lien?
A lien is something that's held in lieu of a lieu of money, a lieu of something in value.
Right. And so remember, it's usually a charge or a claim against the property, or usually a charge or a claim made to enforce the payment of money. So an example of a lien is you own a home, you hire an electrician to upgrade your electrical work, and he tells you, okay, it's going to be $9,000 to upgrade the entire house. You sign a contract saying, fine, that's no problem. And now when he does the work, it's time to pay the electrician. You don't have the money. And you say, I'm sorry, I don't have this money, and I can't pay you right now, or I'm not 100% happy with the work, I'm not going to pay you. That's when the electrician can put a lien on the property, right? It's basically an opportunity for him to force the payment of the work that he did on the property. It's kind of some form of his security or collateral. So does that make sense? That's an example of a lien. You decide that you want to buy a property and that you need a loan, right? Maybe you can't pay in cash, and so you decide that you need a loan. So what do? You go to a lender. They give you $250,000 to purchase the property. That lender is going to put a mortgage lien on the property. You see, that's their security. That's their collateral for the property. So does that make sense? Who has some other examples of liens? Anyone have any other examples of liens that they would want to talk about?
You could have a tax lien if you didn't pay your taxes.
That's right. So the town charges you a certain amount of taxes every year. You don't pay those taxes, they're going to put a lien on the property. Now, it's kind of interesting, and we're going to get into this in a little bit, that there are such things as unrecorded liens. So when we say something is recorded, a recorded lien, where is it recorded?
Town hall record?
Yep.
Town
And
hall.
it's on the deed. It's in the town hall on the deed, right? So something that's unrecorded in the beginning could be property taxes, because every single year when they send you out the bill for you to pay your property taxes, they don't record that as a lien on your property at that very moment. You know, it's not like, I'm just going to make it up, that there's 10,000 households in this municipality. It's not like they're going to update all 10,000 deeds in particular. At least not around here, they don't do that. But if you don't pay those taxes after, and there's no exact time, you know, it could be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it might be, when the town is finally sick and tired that you're not paying those taxes, that's when they can start a lis pendens, or they can start litigation, bringing you to court so that you are forced to have to pay those taxes, or they can force a foreclosure on the property, and that's when it gets recorded. So does that make sense to everyone?
Yes.
All right. So remember, all liens are an encumbrance, right, on a property. An encumbrance is any charge or claim that attaches to the real property and lessens its value or impairs its use. So all liens are under the umbrella of encumbrances, but there are other kinds of encumbrances that are not liens. So what other
Encroachments.
types of encumbrances are not liens?
Encroachments
Encroachment. So what's an encroachment?
is something that is used, part of your property that is used by the state for getting back to wetlands or electrical lines.
Right? It could be, right? Or yeah, or it could be that the utilities have to get back there. Well, an encroachment actually, let's take a step back. Okay. Encroachment is actually when someone like your neighbor, right, puts up a shed,
Yeah.
use that as an example, and they put the shed 1 foot, let's say, or 2 feet, there's no exact number, but they put the shed just a little bit over on your property. That's an encroachment. They're encroaching on your property.
So like an encroachment is like an intrusion on a person's like territory, sort of like their own, like what they own.
Yeah, right. So, you know, again, and so we're going to be going over some of this stuff anyways. You know, here's the road, and here's a parcel of land, and here's another parcel of land. And so this neighbor, they think that they want to put a shed over here, and they go just a little bit on your property. See, they're encroaching on your property, right? That's an encroachment. Easement is somewhat similar, where let's say this is your property, right? Here's your house. And over here, just in the back corner, there's this pole where they're running wires, you know, and so forth. They're running wires. And so maybe the electric light company, and I'm using dotted lines, the electric light company, if they need to get to that pole, they have an easement on your property for, let's just say, the 10 feet to the right of your property, or the, you know, to the back of your property, whatever it is. They have an easement. So this is encroachment, right? That's encroachment. And that's
Encroachment is the shed, building the
Yep.
shed like partially on your property. Okay.
Yep, that's building the shed. They just went over like 1 foot or something, you know, and you might be like, no, you're encroaching on my property. Or if they build, maybe they put some bushes over here, and you're like, hey, wait a minute, you know, the ones that you put in the front, you actually went on my property, you encroached on my property, right?
Okay.
So you might have to prove that with a survey. And then the same thing we're here with an easement is usually like utilities is the easiest way to usually explain an easement.
Or also a shared driveway too, right?
Yeah, could be a shared driveway.
And this has to do with a lien.
Well, remember, so all liens, if we kind of look at it this way, right? Here's encumbrances,
So what's an encumbrance?
right? Encumbrance is a charge or claim against any property.
Thought that was a lien.
Nope. So a lien is a charge or claim against a person's property made to enforce the payment of money. Made to enforce the payment of money. So under encumbrances, you have liens, and you're going to learn this, Dominic, when you get a chance to read this unit, right? You have liens, which talks about really what we usually talk about is money, right? And then we have examples, could be an easement, could be an encroachment, right?
Basically, an encumbrance is anything that is involved with the property, the physical property,
Yep,
against the physical property, not personal property, but physical property.
that's right. And usually, so it's a charge or claim against the property, and usually, does it make the value of the property go up or down?
I mean,
Down.
down.
Almost always, it's going to lessen the value of the property.
Yeah, I wouldn't want something with an easement.
Unless it's a cell phone tower and they're paying you a lot of money to put their cell phone tower in the backyard.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, that's a good point. Shared driveway might be another one. you know, which they call that, you know, an appurtenant, which we don't want to get too deep because that's that's another unit, right? But anyways, so there's the basic of it where, okay, remember, encumbrance, any charge or claim, and it lessens its value or impairs its use, right? A lien is a charge or claim enforcing the payment of money. So like we talked about, like a mortgage lien, or for an electrician, plumber, that type
Mechanics
of thing.
lien?
That's right. I was going to ask you, what's that called? That would be called
Mechanics
a
lien.
mechanics lien. And that's, for instance, like for an electrician or a plumber or something like that. Okay, makes sense?
So can I ask a specific question?
Okay.
So I know I didn't read the book, but like for an encumbrance, how would a charge or claim lessen the value or use of something?
So like put an example this way. Here you are, you have a house, right?
Okay.
You have a nice piece of land. But now come to find out when you go to buy it that the electric light company every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. they need to go on your lands all the way to the back part of your land, and they need to work on some wires and all that good stuff. So is that going to aggravate some people? Is that going to make it so
Oh.
somebody says, well, I wouldn't want to live there because, you know, they got all those trucks there every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. So I would never pay $1 million for that property. Maybe I'd pay like 750,000, but I wouldn't pay $1 million.
So an encumbrance could be like a highway behind in your where your backyard is, because who would want to live in a place where there's noise?
No,
And
but that's not attached to your land. That's not part
Oh,
of your land.
okay, I get it.
That's not exactly on your land. That's a state highway.
But a highway would be an encumbrance.
No. A highway's not an encumbrance on your land. It's not attached to your land. Don't get everybody all confused.
Sorry.
Ron and Dominic, I'm gonna have to mute you guys. That's it. Hold on. I'm always kidding.
Okay, but I get it, Dad. I get it.
Yeah. It can't be attached. It has to be attached to the land, right?
So like like something that makes a loud noise on your land that you pay for could be an encumbrance.
Well, what would example be?
Let's say like a pool motor makes like a very loud noise.
No, that's like, we're talking about things that are things
Construction.
that, yes,
Okay.
structural
Construction
things
on your land.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
my girlfriend can't build a fence in the back of her yard because there's an encumbrance for the back of her yard that they have to be able to get through her yard to get there. So she's not allowed to build a fence in her backyard.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Thanks, Dad.
No problem. Or maybe there's some sort of sewer pipe. You know, it's like something that you can't really do much about sometimes. And a lot of times, not every single time, but a lot of times it transfers from owner to the next owner, to the next owner, to the next owner.
So what if it's like your AC? What if your AC doesn't work?
No, that's part of the mechanics of the property.
Okay.
We're talking about liens and that there's some sort of restriction or someone else is using it.
Oh, so like a condo, you can't put you can't put your own pool in it where a condo is, or you can't have like a bonfire.
Stick with this for now, right? Stick with this for now. Here's the road. Here's the 2 pieces of land. Right? Somebody builds a shed over that's called an encroachment. So stick with that. Example, here's your house, right? The electric light company, they have a pole back here. You see how it's on your land?
Yes.
And they have an easement to be able to go on your land whenever they want to work on these electrical wires. So stick with those things. You don't have to think of too many other instances because it will confuse you. Okay.
I got it. Yep.
All right. So that's the basics about, remember, all liens are encumbrances, but not all encumbrances are liens. So you will see that in your book. Now, there's many different types of liens. So the first one is a voluntary lien. Remember, we talked a little bit about this in the last class, that we want you to remember the acronym of VISE, V-I-S-C. Voluntary, involuntary, statutory, and equitable. So let's talk a little bit about what those mean, right? So first of all, remember, a lien is something where it requires basically some sort of money. There's something involved with forcing the payment of money. So if you decide that you want to get money from a lender, you want to get a loan in order to buy a piece of property, right? You're doing that voluntarily, right? Is someone forcing you to do that? No.
No.
Right? You're doing that voluntarily. You don't have to take out a loan if you don't want to. You can, if you want to, save up all your cash and buy one. So that's considered to be a voluntary lien, that you signed 40 pieces of paper when you bought the house as part of all the closing documents, and that you intentionally took out that loan. So an example of a voluntary lien would be a mortgage loan.
So,
Right.
hey, Rob, question for you on that one. A voluntary lien against a mortgage, is it immediately a lien as soon as you sign the paperwork, or does it have to be put in gone to town hall and put in the books when it becomes a lien? When does it first become a lien?
So the lender, right, the bank, they're not going to give you the money unless they see a copy of the deed, the new deed that usually it's the buyer's attorney is working on. Unless they see a copy of that and how it's written, and that they're going to be usually first in priority, number one mortgage lien, they're not going to give the money. So it's usually done right there in the attorney's office.
Okay, so it's right as soon as you sign it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. It's as soon as you sign it. Even though it might take days or weeks for it to be recorded in the town hall, right? If it's if it's written in the deed that way, that's what it is.
Yeah, it's a question in one of the tests I can remember reading, so I was just wondering.
Yep, yep. Now we also have what's called involuntary liens, so involuntary liens, they're not a matter of choice. They're created by law, right? They're created by law, either statutory or equitable. What would be an example of an involuntary lien? Something that you didn't sign up for, but you have.
Property taxes? Property taxes or car taxes?
Yeah. So remember, you didn't say, oh, well, I agreed to pay these property taxes, but they are a lien on your property. In the beginning, they might be unrecorded, but then if you don't pay them, they're going to be recorded. But they're example of an involuntary lien.
A mechanic's lien?
What is a mechanic? So is a mechanic's lien, is that voluntary or involuntary?
That's voluntary.
Oh, I guess it's voluntary, huh?
Well, it's actually involuntary, where you agreed for them to do the labor or perform the work, but it's just through the statutory and equitable laws, right? Through those laws, you are required to make that payment, right? And it's probably, you would probably call it an equitable. It's probably
An equitable, yeah, true.
it's an equitable because through the court system.
Well, through the court system, isn't that statutory?
No, statutory is through a governing body.
Oh, governing body. Okay.
Like for instance, like example. So let's talk about this because it does get a little bit tricky, right? So if we think about what does it mean when we say, okay, statutory or equitable? Okay, so statutory.
I guess I looked at it as the statutory in the redeemable statutory by redeemable is because you have 30 days or a certain amount of time to pay off the house if it's foreclosed on, but equitable is before the sale of the property. That's why I looked at it as law.
Okay, So think about, well, I mean, it does kind of make sense what you're saying, but think about statutory or statutes. So again, if you were to go into an attorney's office, you're most likely going to see a bunch of books that say Connecticut general statutes. And these are laws that are put into place, laws or ordinances, you know, from a governing body. So example is taxes. When your town decides that, okay, your taxes are going to be 32 mill rate, you know, so much money per 1,000. Okay. That means that they actually had a bunch of, they had a budget meeting, they had a bunch of meetings with the town council, and they decided that, okay, here we are going to levy this particular tax for the function of our government. And so those are the taxes that real estate owners have to pay. So that would be considered statutory, right? Where equitable comes from either common law or what? Courts, right? And so the example with like an electrician is, okay, you were supposed to do all this work. I mean, the electrician was doing all this work, and then you were supposed to pay them for all the work that they did, but you didn't pay them. So what's that electrician going to do? He's going to bring you to, let's just make it up, small claims court. You know, for the decision to be made. Right? So that's kind of the two differences between statutory and equitable. Who has any questions on that?
So statutory, just so I can get this right, statutory is more like your like property taxes or car taxes that you didn't pay, and equitable is more like mechanics liens. Is
Well,
that
I don't necessarily want to say car taxes because we really just have to focus on real property. But we
Okay,
know
okay.
that definitely,
Mhm.
we know that definitely taxes, because those are created by laws
Yeah.
or ordinances from a government body.
Right?
You know,
So
real
taxes more of
property.
like state, has to do with your state statutory.
Well, it could be, you know,
Equitable is
because
more.
when you say ordinances, we could be talking about towns. Because remember, the towns are the ones that decide upon real estate taxes,
Okay.
right?
What is
The
that
town-
called? The lid? LID?
No, well, that's kind of a local improvement district, a little bit different. But yeah, the towns are the ones that decide upon your property taxes, right? So going back to different types of liens, we talked about voluntary, involuntary. We talked about statutory, created by a statute, right? Or ordinance, or a governing body made a decision. We talked about equitable, right? Arising out of common law or a court-ordered judgment. You know, as an example, like, you know, someone did work on your house, you didn't pay them, so they bring you to court. Right? And they say, okay, you do owe them the $7,000 for the work they did on your house, plus you're going to have to pay attorney's fees and court fees, and that could be a lien on your property. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. So that's the whole thing about VIs. Voluntary or involuntary, right? And then statutory or equitable. Now we have two other things that we have to remember when it comes to this as well. We have to understand the difference between general and specific types of liens. So who knows the difference between general and specific?
Isn't general pretty much a doctrine of almost all liens, and then a specific lien is something that's going after a specific part of your property, about your property?
Well, not a specific part of your property, but specifically that property.
That property.
So again, we talked about you own two homes right next to each other, right? You own two homes right next to each other. You don't pay the taxes on this house, right? You decided, hey, I don't have the money to pay those taxes. Can they foreclose on you for this house?
No.
No, they can only foreclose on you for this house. So that's a specific lien. You had a bunch of, you took out a loan for this house. You took out a loan for this house. And this house is right next door. You own it too, right? You took out a loan for this house. Can they foreclose on you for this house? No, only this house, because that is a specific lien, right? Mortgage liens, real estate taxes. Now remember, I'm saying real estate taxes, the taxes on how much on this house, okay? Those are specifically for that property. Now, let's talk about your income tax, the Internal Revenue Service, IRS, your income tax, where you own these two houses. You made $300,000 last year, and you were supposed to pay $25,000 in taxes, and you didn't do that. You just decided that you don't have the money, you didn't save up enough, you didn't plan it correctly, and you own these two houses. What can the IRS do?
Put a lien on your property.
They could put a lien on this property, they could put a lien on this property, and then over here,
General lien.
right over here is your bank account. They could put a lien on, they could freeze those assets. Over here is your brokerage account. They can freeze those assets. So general lien, right, basically means it affects everything you have, the real property and the personal property of the debtor. And it doesn't matter where you go. You might say, well, I'm selling those properties and I'm moving to Australia. It doesn't matter. That's still a general lien on you. Whether you move here, move there, or take off for 10 years and come back, you're still probably going to owe that money, and they can still find a way to come after you. So does that make sense? So who has questions about the difference between general and specific? Everybody feel comfortable with the difference between general and specific? So remember, general affects all your property, real and personal. Specific is just for a specific property. Okay. Who knows what's a vendor's lien? That's another one. So that's the next term on the bottom of that page in bold they want you to know. What is, now if you don't know, don't guess, because you'll probably guess wrong. Because you'll be thinking, well, what's a vendor? But in this yellow book, it's a different terminology. So if we talk about a vendor's lien, who knows what's a vendor's lien? Anybody know?
Well, the vendor is the seller. So it's unpaid like purchase prices of the property, stuff that they owe, the seller owes, right?
So remember, yep, there are some instances where it doesn't happen very often, and there's a lot of people, buyers out there who want to try to make this happen a lot, but it's kind of a tough scenario to have a seller agree to it, where there are some sellers that they will be your bank. Here you are, you want to buy a property, but let's just say again, maybe your credit score is not good, or maybe you don't have enough money saved up for deposit or whatever it might be. So we're not talking rent to own. We're talking that you went to the seller and you said, hey, listen, I'd love to buy this property from you, but I can't get a loan right now. If I give you $10,000 today, will you let me buy it from you? And I promise to give you this amount of money for principal, interest, taxes, and insurance every month. So they're basically your bank, you know, and maybe it's an opportunity for them to make some income. And so they like the idea of this, right? Well, they can basically put what's called, they basically have a vendor's lien on the property, a lien belonging to the seller for the unpaid purchase price of the property. Now, again, it's really what we would discuss as being owner financing, right? That's what that basically is. So a vendor's lien is when the owner is doing owner's financing.
If the seller actually did this, would they immediately put a vendor's lien as soon as in part of the agreement?
Yeah, if they're smart. And yeah, so they basically have a lien to the property. But it's kind of interesting. So usually it's not when they give you 100% of the property.
Right.
Usually it's like, okay, and this gets a little bit tricky, right? And usually you can only do it for mostly for commercial, because a lot of residential lenders, they're not going to allow this. But let's say you're going to buy a commercial property for $100,000, right? Maybe it's a little office or retail space or whatever it might be. Now with commercial properties, most of the time you have to put down at least 25% financing. You have to put at least a 25% down payment to get the financing, right? So if you're going to buy a commercial property for $100,000 purchase price, how much would you have to have just for the down payment? If it's 25%,
$25,000.
$25,000, right? And
Right.
so the bank tells you, hey, listen, I will give you $75,000, you know, to buy this property. You need to come up with $25,000. And you're like, oh man, I thought that I would be able to get it for less money down, and I only have $15,000 saved up. And the bank is like, well, I'm sorry, you know, we only do it, and you talk to most of the banks, we'll only do 25% financing, right? 25% down payment. So you're like, wow, I'm $10,000 short, because here it is, they'll give you 75, you have 15,000 saved up, but you need 100,000 total. So you're missing 10 grand. So you might be able to go to that seller and say, hey, Mr. Seller or Mrs. Seller, here's what's going on. I'm able to get 75,000 from the bank. I have 15,000 saved up. I need to basically get a seller financing for $10,000. And so if they agree to it, they're going to write up the payment schedule. They're going to have an attorney do it. And when they do all the final documentation at the closing, you're going to probably sign a document that says that you're willing to put a vendor's lien on the property until it's paid off. Does that make sense to everyone? Who has questions on that? All right. So let's talk about the effects of the lien on the title. All right. So remember, if there's all these different liens on properties, and what's an example of a lien again? Let's say a mechanic's lien, right? Let's say an example is a mechanic's lien. And who remembers what's a mechanic's lien?
Like the
Involuntary.
service of a plumber. Yep, involuntary.
Electrician or plumber type of thing. Can a property be transferred from one owner to another with a lien on the property?
As
If
long
you
as
buy a property that has
The lien runs with the land.
Yeah, it does run with the land, meaning that it goes from owner to owner to owner.
Owner, right.
But can you buy a property with a lien on it?
yes, as
Yes.
long as both parties know, and you can and it's dealt with before any money gets transferred. Yes.
Right? So the point is that first of all, yes, you can. However, if you're getting a loan to buy a property, most likely that lender will not accept it because they want to be first in line.
Right.
Right? They want to be first
Okay.
in line to get paid off if there was a problem. So again, remember, an existence of a lien does not necessarily prevent the property owner from transferring it to someone else, but it will most likely reduce the value of the property, right? And it's usually going to run with the land until it's paid off and the title is cleared by filing a release of lien by the lien holder. So if someone has to put a lien on a property, you know, now you're upset about that they put a lien on your property, and that's what makes people nervous. Like, you know, people tell me, oh, I'm not paying for that, and I don't like the work that you did. Now all of a sudden the contractor puts a lien on the property. Now they're figuring out, the owner's like, oh my goodness, I don't want a lien on my property. That, you know, hurts my value. Or if I try to sell it, there's going to be a problem. So they always try to find out a way of paying off that lien, getting it taken care of.
Question, Rob. So let's say somebody puts, and this is just my own, I'm just wondering this. So let's say if somebody does some work and let's just say it's me. I don't pay X person for doing the work on my house. they put a lien on my house, but I could care less. I'm not planning to move. I don't really care about it. Can they come and try to foreclose on the property if I don't pay it within a certain amount of time?
That's exactly what they can do.
Okay.
Now, if it's a small amount, are they probably going to do it? Maybe, maybe not. But you will find yourself in court one way or the other if they're going to enforce it.
I guess I'm wondering, do people pay interest on whatever money they haven't paid, or is the court will most likely make them pay interest on that money too for a certain a length of time?
I think it goes by what was in the original agreement.
Okay.
I don't think
Not happening to
there's
me.
an exact interest
It's
rate.
not happening to me. I just was wondering.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's an exact interest type of thing or whatever, but yeah, that would be something that a lawyer would tell you, hey, it probably depends on the previous agreement.
Okay.
Right. And so that's why when we talk about title search, so, you know, in other classes we've discussed, hey, most people should and do a title search on the property before the final real estate transaction is closed, because that title search should hopefully be able to tell you if there's any liens or encumbrances on the property, right? Or even any private restrictions and so forth. Now, we also have this this item or terminology called priority of liens, right? So what is the priority of liens? Refers to the order in which the claims will be satisfied. So again, usually a mortgage company or a lender, they're not going to give you the money unless they know that they are first in line. So how do you become first in line, second in line, third in line? What liens are first in line? Does it go by monetary value? What does it go by?
How they're placed with the records department in the town hall.
Right? So first to record, first in right. So or the priority. So like as an example, Ron had mentioned earlier, well, Rob, when is actually a lien attached to the property, right? When is it really attached to the property? Well, usually it's again when the lien is filed and recorded. And so usually when it comes down to, okay, here we are, somebody buys a house, and now let's say you're buying the house and you're sitting down with your attorney, okay? They're gonna have all the documents done. And so usually within a few days, they have to make sure that they go down to the town hall and submit all the paperwork, or they might be able to do it electronically in some towns, but they have to submit all the paperwork ASAP. So now, even if it's not recorded in the electronic records, the town has possession of that. And so if anybody was to try to come and say, and put in a lien before then, they're going to take a look at the dates and if there were any lawyers involved, because those are technically, I guess you would say, some sort of court appointed officials, so that they can say, oh no, this one was technically recorded and submitted to the town 2 days before the electrician tried to come and submit it.
Hey Rob, is there something called like a day book or something like that they use?
Exactly. So we're talking about the day book, where that's from the time where, let's say, the attorney submits, okay, here's the new paperwork with the new deed, and there's a lien on this property from a mortgage company, right? Well, the 3, 4, 5, 7 people that work in the town hall and the clerk's office, they're probably not going to stop what they're doing at that very minute to take the paperwork from the attorney and put it into the town records, right? It wouldn't make sense. So what they do though, is they do say, okay, when the attorney, let's say, comes in with all the paperwork to record the new lien on the deed on the property, they're gonna log it into a book. They're gonna say, okay, on this date, this person came in, here's the mortgage lien and so forth. And they're gonna have the information about the address. And so that way it's logged in that it has been received by the town hall.
When does the Liz pendens come into play?
Well, let's talk. We'll I mean, we could talk a little bit about it now. But basically, what lis pendens? Who knows what does lis pendens stand for?
Isn't it mean something about a coming lien, something that isn't quite a lien, but it's coming soon?
Right. So lis pendens technically means litigation pending. Right. So lis pendens means litigation pending. That means that there's some sort of court action that is going to be coming into place soon. Right. And so here we are, you didn't pay your mortgage 3, 4, 10 months, whatever it might be, right? Because it's different for every bank, it's different for every scenario. And now the bank basically, you know, whatever it might be, the staff of the bank says, okay, well, you know, all these loans that we have here in Connecticut, we need to get these up to date. And so we're going to take half of them and we're going to start the foreclosure process on these. Right. And so now the first step that they need to do is they need to say, okay, well, we've called you 20 times. We've sent out 30 emails. We've done all this kind of stuff. Well, now we're going to have to get an attorney involved, and we're going to have to start the beginnings of bringing you to court. So there's litigation pending. We're going to have to start bringing you to court. We're going to start a foreclosure date on you. Right. And so the first thing that they have to do is that mortgage company, as an example, they have to send a letter to you that's basically says we're starting a lis pendens, we're starting court action, and then they send a letter to the town, to the clerk's office to let them know that there's litigation pending. So now, if I decide, I come along, maybe I don't know anything about all that, but I'm thinking about buying this property. I can go to the town records because that's a public record, and I could see, oh wow, this person hasn't. Well, I won't see the exact details of every little thing, but I can see, oh, wow, maybe this person probably hasn't been paying their mortgage. And I don't know necessarily how long, but I can see that there's litigation pending that Wells Fargo or whatever lender it is bringing this person to court due to non-payment of their mortgage. And would
I
that
didn't mean to get ahead. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. Would that give me an opportunity to think about things as to maybe I don't want to be involved in this property, or maybe I can get a better price on this property. Maybe they haven't been taking care of this property. So that's where litigation pending or lis pendens comes into play. Make sense?
Yep.
Yes.
So remember, usually the priority of liens is first to record, first in right, first in priority. So the first person to be recorded, first in right, first in priority. Now you usually have the first lien on the property, right? And then all the other ones underneath that are considered to be junior liens, right? Junior liens. However, just like with everything else, we have exceptions to the rule. So who knows, what are a couple of examples of exceptions to the rule?
Well, I mean, your IRS, the taxes, anything that's tax related, town tax related takes precedence. The subordination agreement that we're about to read about is an example of it.
Right, so we know that real estate taxes take priority. So, you know, a mortgage company might say, oh, well, you owe us this amount of money for this property, and maybe the property isn't worth that amount anymore because the value went down, the house wasn't taken care of, all these different things could happen. But no matter what, before anything happens, the town for the real estate taxes is going to get paid first. Okay, so remember, real estate taxes and special assessments take priority. So what are special assessments? What would be an example of special assessments?
Does that go back to the lid thing that I mentioned earlier? So street lights, curbs, things that make basically the property, that the area that you live in, a better area or
Right.
more
But
valuable.
usually remember, it's it's almost, again, so we say the word special assessment, we're talking about some sort of large expensive improvement. So here we are, we have all these nice houses near the lake, right? And the town is sick and tired. Well, every single summer by August, when it's 95 degrees for 20 days, the lake gets too much bacteria because a lot of the runoff from the house drains and all that good stuff is running into the lake. So the town comes up with a plan to start a water sewer drainage system. And they say, okay, all these 40 houses around the lake, they need to sign up for this and they need to connect to it, because we can't have these septic systems that are not working, running water into the lake all the time and ruining it. Okay, and they say it's going to cost $7,000 for each household to connect to this sewer system, as an example. Right, so that would be a special assessment. Whether you want to pay it or not, they're going to, they would have given you most likely some time to go to the town meetings and voice your opinion and maybe even do a vote. But everyone agreed as a general population or from a town council standpoint that this is what they're going to do. So now you might live in one of those houses, you have a $7,000 special assessment on that property. And so most of the time, now it's not all the time because there's always even little exceptions to that. But most of the time when the property transfers, that $7,000 has to be paid off. Or maybe the new owner can take up the balance if that's what the town or that situation agrees with, right? So that's just one example of a lot of different ways in which you could have a special assessment, okay? Subordination agreements. What's a subordination agreement?
That's where entities agree to switch the order, right? So one that may be in a primary position agrees to take a lower position.
Yeah. And you don't see that happen very often, because if you're first in line, right? You're first in line, and this person who is number 10 in line comes to you and says, hey, can we switch? Can I be first in line? You're going to be 10th in line. Are you going to be really happy about doing that? No. So think about, here we are. We have someone who's first in line, okay? And on the mortgage or whatever it might be for priority on the deed, right? And they give you the example of a seller of vacant land, right? And they have the first lien priority. They finance the purchase for the builder. So here's somebody that they own the land, right? They're selling vacant land, and they're financing the builder to be able to build up the property, right? And that's going to cost you whatever it might be, $200,000. But they'll agree that to provide that financing, and they'll agree that they're going to have first priority. But once the property is completed, right, the construction lender is going to be, the property is going to be increased. It's going to be worth more, right? And they're going to agree that if the property was foreclosed on, if it was a forced sale, that the proceeds of that sale will cover both the liens, both for the land and for the construction. Okay, so in the beginning, the seller of just the vacant land is gonna have first priority, right? But now the person buys the land, now they have to get a real big construction loan to build that house, because they just got a loan to buy the land. Now they got to get another loan, a much bigger one, to build the house, right? So the only way the construction lender is going to give them the money
is if they become priority.
They become first in priority. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yeah.
So that would be an example of subordination, where in the beginning they're the first lien holder, but then they become they agree to become the second lien holder, because meaning the ones who finance just the vacant land, because they realize that once that house is built, everything is worth so much more, and it could be paid off even if there was a foreclosure. So who has questions about that? Because it's important to make sure you understand what would be an example of a subordination.
Is that the same as if someone like refinanced? Would it be with like another company and they would become priority, or is it usually when they refinance, it's through the same lender?
Well, it doesn't have to be through the same lender, but refinance is usually like, okay, here I am, I owe $200,000 on this house. and I'm paying 5% interest, right? Example. So I want to lower my interest rate, or I want to take some cash out. Well, technically, when they do a refinance, they have to pay off that first loan in order to get the second. So that wouldn't be subordination.
Okay. Okay.
Usually, if you get a
I
second,
didn't know if that was like taking out a second loan or something. And
well,
then,
taking out a second loan means you don't touch the first.
yeah.
So those are
okay.
two different things, right? Refi usually pay off the first loan in order to get the second. So it wouldn't be subordination because no one's
Okay.
changing their lien position, right? And second loan, they're becoming the second or third loan, and so no one's changing their lien position. But it's good,
Okay.
good examples to think about.
Mhm.
Anybody have any questions on that? All right, so we talked about subordination liens. We talked about real estate taxes. We talked about special assessments, and so forth. So let's talk about we have to spend a little bit more time on real estate tax liens. Okay, and so there's a lot involved here. We're gonna actually even get into the red book if we have the time and kind of go over some of this stuff, right? So really, when it comes to real estate, why do towns charge you real estate taxes?
Because you have to pay taxes to the banks, I'm guessing.
No, you don't have to pay taxes to the banks. Well, not real
Maintain
estate.
Services, schools,
Roads,
roads, utilities.
garbage.
Yeah. So for the services of the town, right? So some of the roads, maybe some of the garbage pickup, the schools. Schools is really the big one. Maybe fire, police. What else would they pay for? Parks, right? Okay. So for the services of the town, the employees of the town, and so forth, right? So imposing these taxes is a governmental power, right? So they want you to know that that's a governmental power. Now, who gives the towns the right to charge these taxes on us?
People, I guess.
Who gave the towns the rights, though? Through what we
Government?
call
Government?
Government?
Yep. What government? State government.
State.
You got it. So you see, was this country founded as a democracy?
Yes.
Republic.
A republic. So technically, remember, we are the United States, right? The
I wanna put-
United States means that, and that means that that's a republic where the states from the very beginning were to hold the most power. And we're kind of in very interesting ways, we're kind of seeing that right now, because states can make a lot of decisions not even the federal government can make. Governors have, if you haven't noticed by now, our governors have a lot of power. They can decide a lot of things, and they can't be forced one way or the other in certain things. So we were started as a republic, and then the term that the yellow book wants you to know is through what's called enabling acts. EN, so you need me to write that out because this is a term you need to know, right? Through enabling acts.
So that's what gives the states, that's what gives the towns the ability to charge taxes?
You got it. That's what gives the towns the rights to do a lot of things in order to enforce laws on us and so forth. The municipalities from the state.
So enabling rights.
Yeah, enabling acts.
Oh, enabling acts. Oh, you know something? I think I made a card for that.
You got it. State to municipalities or towns. I'll just put towns.
That's in the red book, Rob?
No, I think it's probably in a different unit, but it's important to know that they have, that's why the local governments have the right to impose taxes on us. Okay. It's probably in like unit 1 or 2.
Okay.
Yeah, it's probably in like unit 1 or 2.
Can you type out the whole concept, Dad? Enabling acts as states, towns, what?
Right.
Local.
So yeah, it's good to know. Okay. So I'm going to actually see if I can get in the glossary. I want to maybe get the entire definition for you. All right. Let's see here. The old glossary. Enabling acts. State legislation that confers zoning and other powers on municipal governments. Right? So if your boss, example, you have a manager at work and he says, hey, just for today, I'm going to be out of work. I'm not going to be here today. And so you're going to be my manager for the day. Right? And so you can do whatever it is that I do. You know, I'll give you the rights to, I'll tell you what, you can't fire people, but you can tell them to do this and this. You can tell them what time they got to leave. You could tell them what rights and what things you want to get done. That's what the states did. That's what the states did for the town governments. Okay, they conferred the rights to be able to do certain things that the government can do. Okay, so now the towns, here we are, they have to figure out, okay, we need to collect these taxes so we can keep things going. Well, one of the taxes they decided to impose is what's called the general real estate tax, or an ad valorem tax. Right, so you see here, we're talking Latin here today. We got all, this is global. This class is international, right? Paul likes that. This class is international, right? Tell him, Paul, we got all kinds of things going. We were talking Liz pendens. That is an example of Latin. Now we're talking about ad valorem. So what does ad valorem mean?
According to value.
According to value. So that's how your real estate taxes are being calculated. Now remember, real estate taxes, are they general or are they specific?
Specific.
They're specific because they're just for each particular property. And are they voluntary or involuntary?
Involuntary.
Voluntary.
Involuntary. You get
Involuntary.
to decide. They're charging you taxes, whether you want them to or not, whether you agree to it or not. It's involuntary. You can't be like, hey, you know, and I'm thinking, you know, we had a rough 2020. 2021, I'm going to tell the town no taxes this year.
I guess it depends on what militia you belong to.
Yeah. And then are they statutory or equitable?
Statutory.
Statutory.
Oh, no,
because
equitable.
remember, the town council, they're going to be voting on it.
Yeah, equitable.
No, they're statutory.
Oh, are they statutory?
Yeah.
Yeah, because
yeah.
remember, the town council, are they a governing body?
Yeah,
Yeah. So they're going to be voting on it,
statutory.
right? They're going to come up with the budget and figure out how much. Then they got to have some public hearings and review it with everybody. And then you could go there and you could yell at them and say, we shouldn't have this. We don't want a new high school. We don't want to be spending all this money on taxes and da 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 da. And then they're finally going to do a vote and they're like, okay, well, this is what's in the budget and this is how much we have to charge for everyone. Make sense? Who's got questions on that?
Wouldn't you decide the price of the house, like, that you're selling? Like, if I owned a house or I owned a property, wouldn't I decide its value because it's mine?
Well, that sounds like that would be pretty good, right? But
Awesome.
yeah,
No.
but the point is that we're not talking about selling. We're talking about, here's this property and it's been sitting here for, maybe it was just bought, maybe it was just sold, but here's what the town believes is the market value. And then they take 70% of that, and that's called the assessed value. And that's what you get charged taxes on.
But
And
yeah,
whether you say, well, my house is only worth $1, or you say it's $1 million, they're going to have an estimate of what they believe the house is worth.
so it's due to a vote.
Well, not the house, the amount of taxes per value is on a vote. So they might say, okay, for every $1,000 of value, right? For every $1,000 of value of your house, we're going to charge you $32 of tax.
And how do they decide that?
So the first step is, and that's going to be, we're going to talk about that in a few minutes when we get to the red book. It might be today's class or the next class, because there's a corresponding unit, right? So what they're going to do is the first step is they're going to try to figure out, okay, how much money, and we do this, or the town does this every single year. First, they have to figure out how much money do we need to run the town? And then they're going to figure out, okay, how much money can we get from real estate taxes, or what's the percentage, because they have other taxes that they collect on cars and boats. And
Real estate taxes seem to be the biggest thing.
That's that has to do with the assessment equalization factor.
Yeah, we're going to talk about those in a few minutes.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
All right. So remember, the property taxes, which is what Ron said, is usually it's one of the biggest revenue factors, and able to get the most money from the town for real estate property taxes. And they pay for, like it talks about in your book, government services and programs. Could be schools, drainage districts, hospital districts, water districts, sanitary districts, transportation, parks, forests, preserves, and so forth. Now, there are some exemptions, meaning some certain real estate doesn't have to pay taxes. So what are some of those that do not have to pay taxes?
Churches,
Churches don't pay real estate taxes.
local parks, state parks.
Do schools pay taxes?
If they're nonprofit. Parks, recreation, hospitals, educational institutions, schools, that sort of thing, right? That they do, there's either exemptions or significant discounts depending if they're non-for-profit and so forth.
Is it not-for-profit businesses as well?
Well, I guess it depends on the exact classification.
Okay.
So as an example, I don't want to disparage any particular city, but as an example, right?
My God, I want to play.
You never know,
with
somebody
you.
gets their nose out of joint. I don't want to get nobody's nose out of joint, right? But here's an honest to God explanation or example. Here I was, we had a club that was for sale. And when I say club, I'm not going to mention one in particular, but it was something along the lines of whether it was a VFW,
Knights of Columbus,
Elks, Knights of Columbus, and so forth, right? Where they had a nice building that they were in for 40 something years. Okay. And do clubs that are not for profit have to pay real estate taxes? No.
No.
They don't have to pay. They're a charitable foundation, and so they don't have to pay real estate taxes, right? So now we decide, okay, so we put this building up for sale. Now the city realizes, oh wow, this building, if it was any other kind of company type of commercial property, they'd be paying close to $20,000 a year in real estate taxes. Okay. So I put the property on the market. The first boom, within 3 weeks, I get a church. They want to buy it. But it has to get approved to have a church in that building, right? So now, okay, pastor, we need to go to the town hall. I help them every step of the way. We go to town hall. We get the building inspector come over to the property to get the variance, talk about getting a variance. Oh, well, if you want to put a church here, here's all the things you have to do. Boom, you need to redo the driveway. You need to put more lighting in the driveway. You need to redo the entrance. You need to redo this, redo that. Boom, 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 boom. It's going to cost like we figured it was going to cost about $75,000 to do all this stuff, right? And it took about 3-4 weeks for the building inspector to be able to get out to the property. So now the pastor's like, oh, forget it. So now that deal falls apart. Work on it, work on it, work on it, work on it. Here is a community charity. I don't want to mention names, but it's just a charitable foundation that helps the community. They want to buy it. Go call it the town hall. Oh, it's going to be about 3.5-4 weeks before we can get out there, because of this, that. And this was even before COVID. This was last 2 years ago it was. Comes out here, oh, you need to do this, $80,000 worth of work. Because are they going to make any money on real estate taxes for the church? No, the church wouldn't have to pay real estate taxes. Are they going to make any real estate taxes on the charity foundation that I just talked about? No.
No.
So now the third person comes along, is a guy that wants to do a little banquet hall. He calls up so we make the deal, calls up the town hall. You got the building inspectors there in about 6 days. Says, oh yeah, you just gotta do a couple of things here, do this, do that. It's gonna cost about $5,000-$10,000. And boom, the guy buys the place, and now the city is making $20,000 more in taxes than they would have been before. Is that, does that seem right? Like they are more concerned about getting their tax money than necessarily helping out the community with charitable foundations or churches.
And I call that a fine line.
Yeah. Right. But that's just a real life example. I mean, I didn't do anything. I couldn't figure out why, why is it for this? Why is it for that? But you see the reading between the lines, right? You see how it works, right? So anyways, taxes, but in some ways, hey, you have to realize taxes are very important to keep our communities going, because you don't want to drive down the road and have potholes this deep, even though they usually are by the spring.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Right? And you want to go to a nice park, even if you got a nice backyard. It's kind of nice to go to a nice park every now and then, and you want to be able to call 911 and have the fire department come over pretty quick. There's a lot of things that are involved.
Hence the fine line.
Yeah. And so even when it comes to senior citizens, they might get some, or veterans or disabled people, they might get some discounts or exemptions on real estate property taxes. Make sense to everyone?
Yep.
All right. So let's talk about assessment. Okay. So basically, the way that assessment, what that means is that the town is going to have, whether they do a computer model, and we're going to get more into this afterwards because it'll be more specifically for Connecticut, but whether they use a computer software system or an appraisal company or physical inspections, which means that they go from house to house, right? They are going to appraise your house of what they believe it's worth, right? And then they are going to come up with an official valuation, and that's called technically an assessment. They're going to assess what the house is worth. But they're also going to give you an opportunity where you don't have to pay taxes on that full appraised amount, or that full assessed of that. You don't have to pay taxes on that full appraised amount. They're going to give you an assessed value. So if we were to think about this here in Connecticut, let's say, what is the assessed value that you get charged for taxes on? Does anybody know? And it's in your red book.
What? I'm sorry, repeat that again.
What's the assessed value in which taxes are calculated on here in Connecticut?
What are the assessed on property?
So if the town believes your house is worth $200,000.
Oh, 70%, roughly.
Right. In Connecticut,
Oh, that's right, 70%. Yes.
they're going to charge you taxes on 70%.
Right.
Right. So basically, and so remember, this is MV. What is this $200,000? This is MV. What does that stand for? Anybody know?
What is it?
MV. You can't see that?
No, I can't, but
Market value.
That's right.
What corresponding chapter is this in red?
Well, we're on unit 15, real estate taxes and other liens.
Right, but you said it was in the
in
red.
the red book, it would be 16.
16?
Yeah,
Okay.
red book, it would be 16. But we're going to get to that. So
I
let's
know.
talk about this though. So assessed value, we're saying the house has a market value of $200,000. Now let's say the mill rate, right? And what's the mill rate? Who knows?
1% is $1,000.
Right? So that mill rate is your tax rate.
So whenever you hear the word mill rate, you're automatically, from my perspective, you're automatically taking the value is 70% of what the value of the house is.
No. Let's get through it. Let's get because there's a lot here, and that's why it does get a little bit tricky. You are right, but the terms are a little bit different.
Okay.
So when we talk about mill rate, right, we're saying that this is a tax rate that is expressed in a different way. It's expressed in what's called mills. So mill rate is basically 1/1000th of a dollar, right? Or it's 0.001, because how many zeros are there in a 1,000? 3. So you see how it's 3
1,
behind
2, 3.
1, 2, 3 type of thing.
Mhm.
So mill rate is 0.001, or it's 1/1000th of a dollar, right? Or they could say basically like, for example, they use the example in your book. If they say the mill rate is 32 mils, right? Then they could say, well, that is basically what? That's equals 0.032, right? Or it could even be 3.2%. This is all the same thing because of the way that the decimal points work. So if I say the mill rate is 32, technically when I go to do this calculation, I'm going to have to use 0.032, or I can use 3.2%. And so basically they come up with the mill rate by doing what? We'll go back to what we said in the very beginning, right? Is that they are going to figure out, okay, here's how much we need to run the town, right? This is how much money we need in order to for all of our expenditures. Okay, you follow me on that? Then the next step they're going to do is what's called appropriation, where they say, okay, here's how much money we need, here's how much we have to spend, and here's where we're going to get it from. And we're going to get so much of this money from the wonderful world of real estate taxes. That's called appropriation. And the next step is going to be the wonderful world of the tax levy, where they say, okay, we're going to tax these amount of people. And the way that they do it is they say, okay, we have this master list. What's the master list? Anyone know?
It's like a grand list of all the property in the town.
That's right. The grand list of all the property in the town. And they say, okay, by doing a division, here's how much value we have, right? Here's how much value of all the properties we have, divided by how much money we need to get from it. And let's just say, they're going to come up with 32 mils. And that's what they'll say. Okay, the mill rate this year is 32 or 38 or 47. It doesn't really matter. But the whole point is that that's what the town does. So who has questions on that so far? All right. So if they tell you, let's just stick with this whole thing of 32. If they tell you, okay, the mill rate this year is 32. How are we going to figure out how much we're paying in taxes? Well, going back up to here to this $200,000, right? We say this is our market value, but they're not going to charge you on the 200,000. They're going to charge you on what? 70%.
So it'd be 140,000.
Right.
Right. They're going to charge you on 70% of the 200,000. And so what are you going to do? So you take that 200,000, which is the market value, times 70% as an example. And what does that give you? 240,000. Everybody with me so far?
Mm-hmm.
Wait, see, 240 or 140?
140.
I mean, 140. Yeah. And if they say the mill rate is 32 mils, well, I would, just for my sake, to make it easier, right? If they say the mill rate is 32 mils, I figure, okay, here's 32, and it's per 1,000. So I move it over 3 points and it gives me 0.032. So I would multiply times what? 0.032 equals what?
4,480.
And what is that number right there, the 4,480?
Property tax.
That's
Property
right.
tax.
So you see, the $200,000 is the market value. What's this $140,000 called?
Assessed value.
Exactly. Assessed value. What's this 0.032?
Mill.
Mill rate. And then lastly, property taxes.
Tax.
So that's kind of the basics of this. We didn't even get into the whole thing about equalization factor yet. We're going to get into that in a few minutes. So who has questions on this so far?
I'm good with that.
All right, so let's do, anybody have any questions? So let's do another example. I tell you the MV, which is, what does that stand for?
Market value.
Market value is $265,000,
Mhm.
right? And I tell you, and here we are, we're in Connecticut. So let's just assume that we're in Connecticut, because remember, it's not 70% everywhere, but we're talking about in Connecticut, right? And I tell you that the mill rate is 37. How much are you going to pay for property taxes? So I'm going to give you a minute to figure that out. How much are you going to pay for property taxes?
I think this is the only math I'm getting right now.
That's
I
good.
hear-
Doing good. Take step by step, right?
So it's in a question.
I know. I didn't want to like take it that way. Oh man, that's funny though. Good. All right. So let me take out my calculator again. So let's see if we can figure this out together. So the first thing we want to figure out from this is what? The assessed value. And how do we
Assessed
figure out
value.
the assessed value? Is you take 265 times what?
70.
And
70%.
70%.
Right? So what does that come out to be?
185.5.
5.
And so this 185.5 is what?
Assessed value.
Assessed value. Yep.
Everyone with me?
Yep.
All right. And now to calculate the property taxes, what am I going to do?
Multiply it by 0.037.
185, 50, 500, right, times what?
0.037.
0.037.
37.
037 equals what?
683.
350.
3.5.
So who's got questions on that? All right. So now, as an example, we'll do one more, but we got to put in a little, and let's talk about it really quick. We talked a little bit about it, is this wonderful world of what? Equalization factors, the assessment equalization factor, to maybe raise it or lower it in certain districts or counties or towns, right? And they try to do that to try to say that they are being equal to everyone. I don't know of any of these in Connecticut. Maybe there is one. We probably don't have to worry about that. It's not like you have to remember a list, but you do have to realize that in some areas of the country, they might have an equalization factor. So here we are again. We say here.
And that's based on a 15-year or 30-year mortgage, right? Is that where that one is from?
No, it doesn't matter on that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it had that, because remember, all that we're talking about is values of properties.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with the mortgage.
All right.
Yep. So I'm going to actually just click because it doesn't really matter. Oops. Okay. So here we are. The market value is 327,000. Right? And they say that the mill rate is 38, and then they have an equalization factor of 1.2. So how much are the taxes? Let's just assume, just for the sake of making things easier, also that this is Connecticut, because you need to know that. All right. So how much are the taxes? I'll give you a minute to see if you can figure this out. Paul wasn't here, but for the rest of you, this is how we actually started the class, Paul.
You started with this question?
Yeah, well, something really similar.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, because Ron had a question on one of those. So
Mhm.
I'll give you a couple minutes.
Let me go back to my notes.
All right.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah. Let's see if we can figure this one out. Okay,
Coming for a curveball.
what do we want to figure out first?
Assessed value?
Assessed value. So to figure out the assessed value, what do? We take the market value, which is the 327,000, and multiply it times what?
70%.
Now remember, in your, if you were to take a question, it's not always going to be 70%. Like we started off with the class, it could be 40%.
Right.
It could be a number of different things. You have to read the question. Just don't always assume that it's 70%. But in this particular case, because it's Connecticut, we're saying it's 70%, right? So times 70% equals what?
228,900.
228,900. And what's this number?
That's the assessed value.
Assessed value.
Now, what are we going to do next?
At the mill rate.
Mill rate.
No.
Right? So how do we do
I
that?
took-
Go ahead.
You take your
Don't you times it by 1.25 first?
Well, will it make a difference?
Let's see.
I don't know. I guess I could try it both ways.
I did it with the equalization first.
I don't
That's
think
what
it
I
will make a
did.
difference because it's multiplication. But let's do it. Let's do it
Okay.
this way. So let's do it the right way. So basically, the right way would be, okay, we're gonna take the we're gonna take the I'm sorry. We're going to take the assessed value and multiply it times the equalization factor. So the equalization
Okay.
factor, 1.25 times 228,900 equals what?
286,125 is what I got.
Yep, me too.
Okay.
So that equals
286,125.
286,125,
Yes.
right? Makes sense?
Yep.
Now to figure out the final with the mills, right, is we need to do what? We need to take the mill rate, which is, let's say it's 38 mills. So technically, just remember, that's $38 for every $1,000 of value, if you think about it. So we take 38 mils and we say that's really 0.038 times 286, 125, and what does that give you?
10,872.75 cents.
I didn't do it, so let's see here. I just
10,872.75.
all right.
Please tell me I got something right.
That's what I
Does
got.
everyone agree with that? Does everyone agree with that, or does somebody have a different idea of the way they think it should be done?
I got that.
Yeah, same.
All right. So it can get tricky. Now remember what we talked about before in class. I mean, we just never know exactly. You're probably only going to have like 5 or 6 math questions on the state exam, and it shouldn't be like the hardest, worst thing in the world for you. All right.
It is for me.
If you get one of those, you're all set, right? Rachel?
Yeah.
All
I
right.
hope that's to make or break it.
That's right. That's right. So remember now, when we talk about these real estate taxes in most towns, again, not all, but in most towns in Connecticut, when are real estate taxes charged?
Once a year, January,
What
Twice.
month? In most towns, twice a year.
twice a
There's-
year.
Yep.
Yeah, you're right, twice a year.
Yep. In most towns, twice a year. Once in a while, you'll get one where it's once a year. Like I think Windsor is once a year. Now, the due dates for when the taxes are due, what are they called? Which is kind of interesting. What are the due dates for tax payments called? Has anyone ever seen a tax bill before? What are they called? They call it just regular old due date?
Tax day. No, kidding.
So remember,
Usually for the year prior, right?
well, remember, I'm asking you these questions because these are things you need to know that will probably or could be on that state exam. So, and it says it right in there under tax bills. It says that the due dates are also called penalty dates. So if you look at that under the tax bills section, the due dates are also called penalty dates. And remember, are real estate taxes statutory or equitable?
Statutory.
Statutory. So you see how it says the due dates for tax payments, also called the penalty dates, are set by statute. You see? So there's another little example right there.
Yep, are set by statute.
So now remember, real estate taxes must be valid to be enforceable, meaning that they have to be charged properly for a legal purpose, right? And that if they remain delinquent for a certain amount of time for the statutory period, whatever period that is, because it could be different for each town, I believe, then they can impose or be collected, those taxes, through what's called a tax sale. Not a tag sale, right? But a tax sale. Okay. Now this tax sale is what? What is this tax sale?
It's court-ordered sale of real property to raise money or to cover delinquent taxes.
All right. Okay. So remember, basically the town is going to be like, hey, listen, you owe us $22,000 because you haven't paid your taxes on this real estate in the last 2 years. And so now we are going to have to basically take you to court, right? And so they might take you to court for the taxes. And that would be nice if, well, not really nice, but if that was it. But you're also going to get penalties, interest, administrative costs. There's going to be a lot of extra costs. In fact, depending on the area, they might even have to advertise that they're going to do this tax sale or a notice of sale posted on properties and so forth. And usually, basically that's going to go up for bid, and the purchaser is going to pay that certain amount. They're going to have a certain minimum amount, right?
Why is there a tax sale?
Because the person who owned the property didn't pay their taxes.
And this is like after a one-time thing. So like if you don't pay the penalty charge or like the due date, then like your place pretty much goes, you pretty much have to go to court for it.
Well,
And just pay a late fee.
well, it depends. I mean, usually if you miss one or maybe two or maybe three, depending on the scenario, because there's no exact time. But if you don't pay after so much time, and then the town feels like they're not getting anywhere with you, you don't make arrangements, someone just ignores it, then they will bring you to court to do a tax sale. Yes.
See, now you're teaching me how to do my taxes. This is the stuff we should have learned in high school.
Dominic, you don't have to worry about it because most of the time when you buy your first house, they're gonna put the taxes right into your mortgage.
Yeah.
Good thing, right?
Yeah. And you don't have to be reminded because they're going to remind you 100
They're gonna
times.
remind you for you.
The worst part, yeah, the worst part is that some people will ignore it, right? And then when you ignore it, it doesn't just go away. It doesn't just be, you know, people think like, you know, like we have a little dog named Rolo, and if he doesn't want to do something, he just looks like this. He doesn't look at you,
Facts.
like you're not there, right? He thinks he could just ignore you. It doesn't work that way in real life. You don't pay, you gotta pay sooner or later. It comes, it will keep coming back at you.
It would seem the people that don't pay attention can afford it anyways.
Yeah, the people that don't pay attention. You never heard the thing, hey, I'm so broke I can't even pay
Can't pay
attention.
attention. Yeah.
So anyways, usually they're going to put it out for bid, and the bidder is going to pay that delinquent tax amount. And, you know, there's all types of different things that happen in different counties and states, and some counties and states will sell tax liens and so forth. And we don't want to get into that in this discussion because I'm not an expert on it and we can get ourselves confused. But really what the book wants you to know, which they have it in italics, is what is a certificate of sale, right?
Is this basically like a foreclosure?
Well, it's kind of, if you think about it, the town or city is foreclosing on it.
You're
Starting the
getting there.
process,
It's
basically.
getting to that direction.
Yeah.
Right.
They're basically foreclosing on you because, you know, it's not like they want to necessarily take possession of the property and be sitting on it. So they take possession of the property and usually they're going to put it out for sale. Now, here's where it gets a little bit tricky, and we only got 3 minutes. I don't think that's enough time to explain it all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say this is part 1 of real estate taxes and other liens.
Ending
And,
at statutory rights of redemption.
that's where we're going to start up. We're going to start up fresh, and that's technically going to be on Tuesday. All right, on Tuesday, we're going to start fresh at statutory right of redemption and go from there for the rest of the unit and then have a quiz on it. Okay, does that make sense to everyone?